Hey everyone, welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. I am Gavin. I have some English breakfast tea. I have set up my library a little bit more aesthetically, even though you can't really see anything because I've got black bookshelves and you can't even see what's on the shelves. Yay! I thought, because I was really inspired by my friend Desi from Darling Desi, to do this kind of cottagecore recommendations, but make it middle grade. Desi does actually have a video with recommendations, book recommendations, from middle grade to adult, so I will link that in the description box. But there's definitely something really charming and alluring about cottagecore. Now, if you don't know what cottagecore is, neither do I. I'm only joking. It's more of a romanticised Western version of agricultural life, centred on ideas of simple living and harmony with nature. Now, there are a lot of middle grade children's books that have those kind of vibes, has those feelings that you would get from the cottagecore aesthetic. Now, there is a lot more to cottagecore than meets the eye, so the recommendations that I will have in this video aren't going to be, well, specifically cottagecore, but they will have cottagecore themes, or they have the kind of setting or characters behave in certain ways that would remind you of cottagecore. So please go easy on me. I have not recommended cottagecore-like books before, and these are definitely all going to remain children's books, middle grade books. Some of them you might have heard of, some of them you might not have heard of. I will be doing this in alphabetical order by author surname as well. So without further ado, I will get into it. So the first recommendation is In Doglandwood by Emma Carroll. This one follows Alice. Her brother is getting a chance at having a heart transplant, so Alice is ending up forced to live with her estranged grandmother. Now, her grandmother has this really beautiful house where at the bottom of her house is Darkling wood. The grandmother, she wants Darkling wood to be, cut down and everything, but Alice, she ends up finding a home in these woods. She absolutely loves nature and getting into the woods and what she discovers there, because she ends up discovering fairies and she wonders what's real and what isn't real. So Alice falling in love with the wood, being part of nature, discovering fairies, this kind of thing, I think, is something that is perfect if you want those cottagecore kind of vibes. Introducing the fairies and the magic in this, it's very natural. It's not too in your face or fantastical, and I feel like that kind of level of realism really works for this kind of book. And cottagecore. So the next one is probably a little bit of a strange one, but that is A Tangle of Spells by Michelle Harrison. Hear me out. This is the third book in the Pinch of Magic series, but you do not actually need to read the first two to read this one. And this, I would say, is the best version of cottagecore from the series, so I couldn't recommend the first two in this video. So the series follows three Widdershins girls, Betty, Charlie, and Fliss, and they are sisters who have these enchanted objects. Now, the first two books have totally different plot lines, so it wouldn't really be any use to me to explain what the plots of the first ones are, because each book has a sort of singular plot. I mean, I would totally recommend starting from the start anyway. Honestly, you can read just this one. Honestly, it might spoil some of the things that happens in the first two, but for the plot, for the story, you do not need to read the first two. Anyway, getting into this, the vibes of this is so cottagecore because the Widdershins girls, they end up moving to a whole new place. They move to a small postcard pretty village and move into Blackbird Cottage. Now, this village, there's something not quite right with this village. There is this hungry tree that seems to eat anything, but there's also TikTok Forest, and when you enter TikTok Forest, time seems to escape you. Now, with the Pinch of Magic series, it's very atmospheric. There are witches. However, the Widdershins aren't witches. They just have magical objects. So the magic is very subtle and definitely cottagecore vibes in this, because Blackbird Cottage, it is like a very rundown cottage and the girls end up living there. So the girls end up exploring this cottage. They find a secret room and there's just something about this village that they need to find out. And it's just, honestly, cottagecore vibes, 10 out of 10. You got the forest, you got the cottage. What more do you need? And one that I would be shocked if you had not heard of this one is Kiki's Delivery Service by Eiko Kadono, and this is a version that is illustrated by Joe Todd Stanton, and he does such a beautiful job at painting this beautiful village. One of the things I love about this book is that, the Studio Ghibli movie definitely made such a great version of this. If you did not know, the book did come before the movie, but this one, it just paints that gorgeous small town vibe so well. So this follows Kiki and her cat called Gigi, and they end up moving to this little village so that she can make her own magical stamp on it. However, the best thing she can do is fly a broomstick, so she starts a delivery service on her broomstick. And what's great about this is, honestly, the descriptions of the village. It's so cozy. I tell you, every single time I mention this book in a video of mine, I always end up reading out a part of this book, and this is always the part I read out. Okay, so listen to this. Once there was a little town sandwiched between a deep forest and gentle grassy hills. The town was built on an easy southward slope, its roofs the colours of dark slices of toast all in a row. It paints this really gorgeous, small town, green, lush setting. Honestly, I think it would just be perfect for that cottagecore vibe. She also ends up living in a bakery, and it's just perfect. It's just such a cozy, wholesome book. I think I would definitely be amiss if I didn't include these two, but also the Tea Dragon Society and the Tea Dragon Festival by Kay O'Neill. They did such a phenomenal job at, well, illustrating this, not just writing it, but illustrating it as well. So for the first one, you have these gorgeous green settings, and but you have, yeah, the forest there, you have the vines, you also have tea, and honestly, if that does not scream cottagecore, I don't know what does. So this is essentially set in a world with tea dragons, and tea dragons are, you know, little creatures, little dragons that grow like tea leaves off of their bodies, and people drink it. It definitely sounds better than how I just described it. But we do follow Greta, who is learning the dying art of tea dragon caretaking, and it is just a really gorgeous, like, visual experience, this book, really, and including the Tea Dragon Festival. And there is a third book coming out soon as well, which I cannot wait to get my hands on. And if anything else, it makes a great fan for when you're on your picnics. Oh, 10 out of 10. So if you don't just want, you know, to read a book but also have that visual experience, then the Tea Dragon Society is such a great way of doing that. And it's just so wholesome and cute. The next one is The Valley of Lost Secrets by Lesley Parr. This one is set in September 1939, so yes, it's from the very start of the Second World War, and Jimmy is evacuated from London to a very small village in Wales. It's definitely very different from, you know, the hustle and bustle of London to this really gorgeously green village. There is a valley, and he ends up finding a skull in a tree, and it leads him on this kind of mission to find out what happened to the skull. There's like a bit of a mystery going on. He ends up making friends in this very small village, and I think what cottagecore also does very well is the idea of self-discovery, self-reliance. Jimmy definitely discovers a lot about himself through the course of this book, and through, you know, nature, and through the valley, and it's just really beautiful. I mean, just a very, very green book. Next we have Pax by Sara Pennypacker. So this one follows Peter, and he saves a young fox cub called Pax, and then the war approaches, and Peter's dad tells him that he has to go and live with his grandfather, except Peter can't take Pax. So Pax ends up throwing a toy into the forest so that Pax will go after it, and then when Pax comes back, Peter and his dad have left. However, Peter cannot go one night without his fox cub Pax, so he ends up leaving his grandfather's house on a journey, on an adventure to reunite with Pax. This is a dual narrative, like a dual perspective, so we do follow Pax and we do follow Peter. So it is just like this beautiful story. Think Fox and the Hound, and then, oh, I'm tearing up. Stop. When Marnie Was There by Joan J. Robinson. Yes, another book that Studio Ghibli used as a movie. Studio Ghibli just know what's going to work visually. They really do. So this one follows a misfit called Anna, and she lives with her foster parents. She ends up getting sent to Norfolk to live with Mr. and Mrs. Pegg, and she goes on her own little adventures. So she ends up coming across Marsh House, where she meets Marnie. And Marnie is this mysterious girl who, you know, ends up vanishing, and Anna has no idea what happened to her. Our main character, Anna, is very misunderstood. She's very quiet. However, Marnie helps her to open up. And it made this such a sweet and wholesome read, and it definitely had a sort of similar vibe to Anne of Green Gables. The movie is fantastic, and I love the movie, but it doesn't quite hit the same as the book. So if you've watched the movie and you loved it, honestly, there's no reason why you shouldn't read the book. But definitely beautiful, definitely melancholic at times, but definitely fits in with the cottagecore themes of like self-discovery, self-reliance, and caring for others. Another fantastic one is Root Magic by Eden Royce. This one definitely utilizes nature and the magic of nature as well, coupled with some atmospheric and brilliant sensory descriptions of the marshes where the story is set. So this is set in the 1960s in South Carolina. We follow Jez and Jay, and they are learning root work from their family, and that's like what their family practices. It protects them from legendary spirits from Gula folktales such as Hains and Boohags. It's definitely the descriptions of the scenery, the marshes, the ability to use magic from, you know, roots and root work. That's why I put it on this list. It's also just a brilliant story. The sibling relationship between Jez and Jay, the way they are so family oriented as well because they live with their mum too, and their uncle, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful book, and I love it with my whole entire heart. Next up is The Ghost of Gosswater by Lucy Strange, and this one is a little bit close to my heart because there is a character with my surname in this too. So this is also set in the Lake District at the turn of the century. So it's 1899 going into 1900. And the Lake District is this gorgeous, gorgeous place. I live not too far from it actually. I've been a couple of times. I love it. It's one of my favourite places on this planet Earth. It has the mountains, it has the hills, it has the forests, it has the rivers. So this one follows 12-year-old Lady Agatha Asquith, and she lives in Gosswater Hall. Now when the Earl dies, she ends up getting casted away from the hall, and she's forced to live with the person who she never realised was her father in this really small cottage. So she ends up having to adjust from living in this grand hall to living in this very small cottage with a guy she's never met before who is calling her his father. Who's calling her father? Who's calling him her father? I don't know how to... And it's just like this great dynamic and a great way for her to learn that experience. There is also actually, because it is The Ghost of Gosswater, there is a ghost. There is a mystery also to go with this that is tied into Lady Agatha's inheritance, her family, her history. All of that is tied in there too. And it's a fantastic book. The atmosphere is pitch perfect. But yes, it has the cottagecore vibes with the cottage and learning to go from really fancy living to a more simplistic life. And it's just one of my faves, okay? So the last one is Echo Mountain by Lauren Wolk. This is set during the Great Depression, and we follow Ellie and her family who lose everything in the Great Depression. They have to go from their city life to living in the wilderness and the rocky terrain of Echo Mountain. I got a little bit of like Little House on the Prairie vibes from this one. Ellie loves being part of nature, and she finds like a lot of freedom being in the mountains. However, her father ends up getting into a coma, and it changes her, family life forever. Ellie has to make her way to the top of the mountain to find this woman called the Hag, who has these healing secrets. The whole setting vibe of it, the mountain, the idea that nature can heal, it has it all. Richly atmospheric, and it does question Ellie of who she is as a person, who she is as a character, and what her family means to her. This book can be a little bit heavy with its themes. However, for Cottagecore, it's great. So those were my Cottagecore middle grade recommendations. I've probably done a really bad job, but give me a like if you thought I did a good job, and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment, let me know your Cottagecore recommendations, whether it's middle grade, young adult, anything at all, let me know, and I will hopefully see you in the next video. Bye!